I am good. I'm ready to talk some book mess.
Well, you gave it to us. So, what we like to do in But Make It Books is also talk about how you're feeling. So, how you feeling?
You know what? I'm good. I feel like the world is pretty much always on fire these days,
Yes.
but is my safe space.
Oh, I love that. Mine too. So, for our snowball, what's a book you recently read that made you stop and think differently about something?
So I don't know if you've read this book because remember I'm a YA author, so a
Hmm.
lot of times I'll stay in that YA space because I like to amplify other Black authors.
Hmm.
But I recently read The Black Girl Survives This One. Have you heard of that one?
No, but that's on my. No, I have heard of it. It's on my list. Yes.
That really what I loved about it was I like horror anyway, and I like mystery and suspense and
Hmm.
stuff like that. But what I really loved about it was just the concept of this is horror. There are going to be people who are harmed or hurt, but
Hmm.
not the black girl. And I just, it was just something about
Yeah.
that, just kind of like that dynamic of keeping us safe and making sure we're the survivors just
I
resonated
love
so
that.
much with me because the world is on fire right now.
Ain't it though? I wish it would stop
Please, please.
for all of our sake, honestly. So let's get into the bio. Let's tell the folks who you are. So Paula Chase is the co-founder of the Brown Bookshelf and a longtime advocate for diversifying the fiction featuring Black characters in educational and library spaces. She's the recipient of the Assembly on Literature for Adolescents and for her advocacy work. Chase is the author of 10 novels. Not one, not two, but 10, y'all. And she just gave me some tea, so she's about to be 11. Oh my gosh. Let me go back up. Sorry, y'all. I'm going through it. Her critically acclaimed middle grade debut, So Done, was named a Kurtz Review's Best Book and a Chicago Library Best of the Best Book. So Done, Doughboys, Turning Point, and Keeping It Real were Junior Library Guild Gold selections and tackled tough topics for young readers. Her five Del Rio Bay quick novel helped launch Kensington Books, a YA imprint in 2007. Now she's taking back with The Balancing Act, the first book in the Heights series, a story that examines community, grief, ambition, and what it means to be seen or invisible in your own neighborhood. So with that, I'm going to welcome Paula Chase.
Hi. Thank you. Bios are so weird, but because all that is just to say I've been doing this for a minute.
That's exactly what it is. Every time somebody reads my bio, I say, wait, who that?
Right.
Me? Yeah, it's me. Bios are so funny. It's so funny when I read authors' bios too, because they're like, I did do that.
You're right.
You did do that, y'all. Y'all did do that. So today we're talking about The Heights, the first book in the installment, The Balancing Act. So you classified this as like Sweet Valley High, in Gossip Girl, like all of that in Black.
Yes.
So for the listeners who haven't encountered The Heights or The Balancing Act, can you tell us in your own words what's it about?
Yeah, well, you mentioned Sweet Valley High and Gossip Girl, and it's really important. That's an important element of what it is because we still really, don't have books like that. And by books like that, I mean books that have caused a stir, right? I mean books that live rent free in your head for decades that have molded generations of readers. We don't have those type of books for us for real.
Yeah.
And this is my version of that. But really, what Balancing Act is about at the heart is it's about two friends who are really trying to recover from a tragedy. That tragedy is right up front. It's not a spoiler, like we know coming in. But they are trying to recover from this tragedy, and they're doing it through an elite charter school where they think, we ready to get the bag, we ready to like, have our life set, what with this path, and then an anonymous social media account and health issues completely throw a wrench into things.
Yes, that's right. Hot lips is hot lipping. Um,
Yes.
you kind of touched on this already, but why did you feel this story needed to be told right now? And I know your daughter is like semi kind of pushed it there with the
Well,
gymnast piece anyway.
no, my
Oh,
daughter's a ballet dancer, right?
ballet.
And so, but so it's funny because a lot of people kind of connect the fact that I have two daughters with the fact that I write YA, but I started writing YA when I only had one daughter and she was only like 9. And so it's funny because I'm just really just tapped into that age and that stage. I like that area. I like covering that area. So, but I thought that this book in particular was necessary because I do have a daughter that she is now a professional ballet dancer, but you know what, how do you get there, right? How do you
Yeah.
get there? And so I wanted to take that journey of like hyper professionalization in young people because we see it, a lot. And I'm not making a commentary on whether it's good or bad because I've raised a daughter who was hyper professional. She knew she wanted to do this at a very young age. So I thought it was good to, I thought it was a good time to take that trip, to take that journey with what it must be like when you already know what you want to do at a very young age and what it takes to get there.
I really like that. It definitely showed through out of it. Um, I'm actually going to start with, if you have the book near you, could you read a passage?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And so this book is told in a dual perspective. So we get revolving chapters between China Thomas and Jamal Henderson. So I'm actually going to start with Jamal's chapter and that tragedy that we talked about. We are starting from that tragedy on his chapter. It's already happened.
Okay.
Now, hold up. Look, let me stop trying
I
to be
know,
cute.
I know, I've contacted before.
You know what I need. My brother is dead. 4 words, 15 letters that weigh a ton. The words try to connect to that night in Coldaway. Was it really only 10 days ago? I won't let any of that information connect. I don't want to hear the shots. Don't want to think about my life being fine just 240 hours ago. Don't want to remember what it felt like to run toward the pavilion. Don't want to feel the cold in my lungs as I raced past everybody because I knew. I don't know why, but I knew it was Jock. I do know why. But I can't think about it right now. Not with all these people in the house, whispering condolences to my mother, pressing their hand on my shoulder as they say sorry, like they're trying to keep me from floating up to heaven with Jock. Brawny, Jock's best friend, sits on the couch, head down, hands cupping his temple. Anytime someone touches his shoulder, meaning to console, his body tenses like it literally can't bear the sympathy. He hasn't looked up in 15 minutes. I counted. I watched Pierre in the corner of the living room, trapped by Junior Jr., the dude that owns the chicken shack on 7th Street. He probably supposed to be trying to encourage Pierre to stay strong, but right now, Junior Jr. looking sad as fuck, and Pierre's eyes dart, looking for somebody to save him. The entire crew is hemmed up with somebody trying to give them what the preacher at Jock's memorial service called words of comfort. The fuck that mean anyway? China is standing by her mom, her hand at Mama Witt's elbow, ready to help guide her to a chair at any second. China seems afraid to leave her side. They're talking to our neighbor, Miss Pat, who rubs China's back every few seconds. I can't tell if Miss Pat is consoling China over a job or because Mama Witt is getting so thin she looks like a small child.
Yes. So let's talk about that passage and grief in language and what we name. There's a powerful moment later on where China's trying to go through everything, and everybody keeps saying, I'm sorry for your loss, when they're talking about Jacques. And she says, you lose items, not people. Jacques was killed. That was really important. Why was it important for you to reclaim that language? Well, for China to reclaim that language?
So, just like that part where Jamal says words of comfort and he questions like what that means. China reclaiming how you refer to somebody that's been killed
Right.
was important to me because too often there are these niceties that we use to describe things. And while I get that, right, while it's important because we have to, make sure that we are sensitive to folks, because these are the two people that actually are impacted directly by his loss. It was important that they be able to speak in terms of anger if they wanted. He wasn't lost, he was taken from us. And
Yeah.
so that's why it was, I want to make sure that we respect that no matter how nice we try to make death sometimes for young people, they can see it for what it is and they can feel it for what it is.
No, I really like that because the novel Greed doesn't feel like it has permission to like be, and I think that's reflective of like today. Like when someone is passes away, sometimes the world just keeps moving, right? And so
Yes.
you don't have a lot of time to take that in and recover from it. And such young bodies and minds, they
Yes.
have to go through all of this as they're going through it. And you can see it through China and Jamal. They're both struggling in their grief and feel like they have no time to process their loss. Um, why was it important to showcase in different ways how it manifested in both of them? Like in Jamal came through how with China it just came through hyper perfectionism, it seemed.
Absolutely. And overprotectiveness. Like you see in China how she is truly trying to protect everybody around her. Like, like she can't bear to lose a single other person, right? Which I think all of us probably feel like after we've experienced that. But at the same time, we also know that we don't control that, right? We don't get to control that somebody is going to be taken from us. And so no matter how protective she is, but that is what we see. We see it manifested in very different ways, but we also, see it manifested in the fact that they are at the school and this
Yes.
is something new and they do have to like get on their grind because, as you said, the world keeps moving, right? So it's also manifested itself in their approach to that hustle.
Yeah. Let's talk about hustle. Because right now we're in the heights. We got this new school that's coming up. It's snatching people. Okay. Like Dr. Walker comes from the neighborhood. He's been in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that is a powerful commentary too. Because we got Mama Wit. She also was one of those new projects of another former charter school. Dr. Walker was a part of that. Walker was a part of that as well. Why was it important to showcase someone who coming into the neighborhood? Well, first of all, he left the neighborhood, came back, started the school, but then it's taking resources from all these different communities, and the result of that is anger
Yeah.
from a lot of the different schools, anger within the community, but then also you find the word I'm looking for, I guess, is not acceptance, but a hope. Why was it important to have like a character like Dr. Walker?
Roundabout
way.
It's it's okay. So it's interesting to me that one thing can pop off 20 different views, right? Like you said, like this person comes from a working class neighborhood, and he's an Ivy League graduate. He's used sports to get that Ivy League scholarship. And then he comes back and says, I want to make a path for young people too. And you think to yourself, well, how could that be a bad thing, right? And yet everybody that you mentioned finds a way to make it a bad thing. You have the white characters who are just jealous. Like, let's just be clear.
Yeah, they're jealous.
They're jealous that he started this school. And then you have the the black people from his old community who were angry because they're like, but you're stripping our school of
Mm-hmm.
that talent for your school. But like you said, right there in the middle, there's hope. But it's like, oh, but this is a new path though. And why
Mm-hmm.
can't we celebrate that this is a new path? So it really honestly was important to show that dynamic that I think we normally call crabs in a barrel is a lot
Mm-hmm.
more complicated than we make it. Like we try to make it just like, oh, we all trying to hold each other down.
Right.
No, no, not necessarily. Everybody has a reason for why they are upset that they aren't a part of something. That's what that
Mm-hmm.
really is. And so that's why he was
Mm-hmm.
important because he's making something. And then as a reader, you can either be suspicious of it too, or you can
Mm-hmm.
be like, no, this is great. But everybody has their own reason for why they feel that
Mm-hmm.
way.
And I like that because I think about that a lot in my own work. Being in politics and like what happens to the community if things change in this way. And I think the best thing that happened in this is because Jamal was going to be fine regardless of where if he went. That's just the clearness,
Yep.
right? But China, no. And so I want to talk about that because there's a lot of invisibility in being seen. And Jock was one of those people who saw her. I think even more than Jamal.
Yeah.
Um, Especially when it comes to her talent. She said she describes feeling like a freak show. She's jumping on this trampoline in her backyard. She's a part of this local program for gymnastics, the summer camp. But she feels like she has wings. Like every time she gets on that trampoline, she doesn't feel like an ordinary person. There's something about being seen but not really understood or believed, which we know that Leash doesn't feel that way about her. How did you approach writing young people who are hyper visible in this way, but completely invisible in other ways? Because she's only a superstar here, but she's not a superstar home.
I don't, it's when I love the way things come out of things because it
Mhm.
makes it seem so intentional. Like, girl, you so smart. You see what you did there? It's not.
It's not intentional, but it's funny that you're like,
Yeah, no,
it just
but-
happened. I mean, the story told me.
right, but in truth, in all of my stories, I'm a very character driven author, right?
Mhm.
The plot never drives my stories, the characters do.
Right.
And in telling China's story, again, not really a spoiler, she has been taking care of her chronically ill mom since she was 7 or 8 years old.
Mhm.
And so, what, I really wanted to showcase there was that she loves the way that it feels to do gymnastics, like you said, it gives her this freedom, but at the same time, while there are other people who see that gymnastics as a means to an end, it's super important to them. She has a
Mhm.
sick mom at home, and she was like, I'm able to put this into perspective. Y'all are taking this way too seriously. And
Mhm.
so that's really where that dynamic, that her and Leash have, where one is hyper visible and one is invisible, comes into play because in a lot of respects, China is invisible because she's never really had the opportunity because her mind is focused on her mother.
Mhm.
So it's not even like she's invisible because the world doesn't see her. She's invisible because her priorities are in a different place.
Mhm. I definitely see that a lot. I want to also talk about too the difference between Leash and China because Leash was born for this. Like she was raised in this. Like she's professional.
Yes, right.
And China is a diamond in the rough. Word to the program. Um, and the opening pages too, and throughout the novel, we see in show corporate partnerships promising resources to the school, media coverage, the neighborhood. But then the actual lives of the kids, their struggles seem to exist completely different from the reality of how it can be perceived, but also the way that these folks feel like they own them. Can you talk about that gap of control?
It's especially right now, like we're in the middle of the whole, college football playoff, conversation for those who,
The
watch
name
sports, and
icons.
I
Yeah.
do. Go Dukes, because James Madison made it in, and that's my alma mater. But I'm also a Hurricane fan,
Like
so like
Texas
I'm
in
excited because
general.
two teams made it in. But my point of that is when you look at college students, college athletes, and that school does own that time, right? Like it's very difficult for them to be the student part because the athlete part is so demanding. And that's
Yes.
what I was trying to convey here is that it doesn't just happen at the college level. It very much happens at, once a child is involved in any type of competitive sport for certain, even at a rec level, right? They're like, no, 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 you need to show up to practice this many times, that many times. And so what I was, really going for there is to like help people understand the tug and pull that's on their, not only their time, but on their expectations in terms of how they are there to lift that program up on their
Mhm.
shoulders while also just being a teenager, while also being a student, while also being somebody's potential caretaker, or while dealing with grief. They're doing all this, and the schools like that is, I know you have some things on your mind, but
But why you doing that? Can you do this too?
could you, and I mean focus, can you focus?
Yeah. It's like focus. My brother just died.
Right,
Focus.
right, my condolences, but
Condolences. But like get back to the game. So that shows up a lot. The other thing that I realized too, and I love that you did, was flip it on its head, was earlier in your career you were very focused on what stories get told about Black characters. So now in the Heights, here's them who gets to tell the story and who has to listen. All the relatives, all the institutions, media, Black Swan, all of them. They all seem to have a say on how this neighborhood is being perceived. But then you have Hot Lip come in. And she's taking that control away from those who seem that they believe that they're empowered and controlling the narrative. What were you exploring about respect and whose voices matter?
in truth, Hot Lips for me very much represents how easily social media becomes the narrative. Like as soon as somebody says it on
Yes.
social media, it is the narrative for like 10 seconds, okay? Until somebody else comes up and comments behind. It is amazing how fast things move because of social media from one post, one comment. And that's what I was trying to convey there, that this person who all we know is that they're female because they have admitted that.
Yes.
But this woman, child, teenager, we don't know nothing else other than they're female, comes in and says one thing, and then everybody jumps on it. And so why I wanted that element is because just like we just finished talking about, the school owning their time, now not only do I have to deal with, real life and practice, now I got to deal with somebody who out here maybe telling my business potentially.
Because she low key wasn't wrong
Right.
anytime.
And that's it,
That's the
right?
scary part.
Is that people are like, whoa, wait a minute. She really, out here, spilling some
Yeah.
tea. But I needed that element because social media plays such a prevalent part in young people's lives. And you talked about, exactly who gets to tell the story, who gets to have their say in who I am. Just when you think you're ready to tell your story, then social media enters the chat and you like, now I gotta combat this or not, in China's case, or not.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. Like in the story, China really, she's like, I don't like social media. Y'all making me do this. I do not live and die by this thing. Which is refreshing to see in a youth.
We needed that, right? Like I needed, again, that having her be that way for me was also about honoring that she has too much going on in her life for that to be important.
And it really showed because a lot of people have a lot going on, but then they use social media as that escape to run
Yes.
away.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. So let's talk about the caretaking of what China had to go through. One of the things that strikes me the most about the Balancing Act is that they're dealing with like a lot. It really is like they're mini adults. They're managing everything, grief, and China's dealing with her own, you know, sick mother, and that's a lot. When you're writing like YA middle school genre, how do you balance showing the reality of their circumstances without crushing the reader? Because you were super raw in this book, which is how kids talk. Because I'm a older sibling, and they do.
Yes.
Like, who taught this? I'm like, oh Lord, just made another one. So how do you balance that writing without crushing the kid?
Um, again, I think it's
Or
about
is that the point?
well, no, it's not, right? Like I'm never
Or
despite
no, that's their reality. Like
right.
but is that the point?
See, that's the reality because for me, like, I tell this story just because it cracks me up. Like, so, my daughters are 10 years apart, but I have a 31-year-old and a 21-year-old. And so, all my family, they'll read the books. And so the 31-year-old had, started reading the book, and she texted her sister and said, "What's wrong with your mother?" Right? So because she was upset about Jock. So she said, "What is wrong with your mother?"
Oh, I was upset too. I ain't going on. I was super on that trampoline, and I knew it was going to happen because it was in the back, on the back. So I knew it was happening. I was like, no, maybe I misread that. And I said, no, I didn't.
You did not. And I'm gonna hold everybody's hand and just say that it is the reality, right? And it's important for me to reflect real life. I write contemporary, realistic. And what that means is that there's joy and there's pain, right? There are good moments and there are bad moments because that's real life. Do I try to make it extra messy? Of course, because I want it to be fun within the reality, right? So there's always going to be that, but the way that I write it without crushing the reader, in my opinion, this is just an opinion about how I do it, but I think it's about making sure that the characters feel well rounded. You need to be invested in those characters. You need to care about them. They can piss you off, or you can love them, but at least you feel something about them because they're kind of rounded out. And then that's how you don't crush them because this is a real person going through something that feels real. It certainly is real to them. I just want people to have empathy for the characters. They can go high and low with that, but I just want them to have empathy. And I think that's how you keep it from being soul crushing, just because you kind of understand their circumstances as you go along. So you're like, yeah, what, she made me mad, but I kind of, I feel bad for her.
Yeah. The other thing that I loved in this book was that the adults were messier than the kids. And I like that because when I was a young warthog, I just thought the adults, my parents, always had the answers. So when they did something or made a mistake, I was sitting there like, you saw something the world got out of you. But when you write messy adult characters, you also recognize that they're living this life too the first time you're also living it.
Yes.
And you give them some empathy with that. So I love that you showed how messy the adults are. They're messy.
They are very messy, and there's this expectation from the adults that they can hide that messiness from the teen characters, and they can't, and it's always going to come back to haunt them, always.
Kids leave you for filth all the time. Listen.
Won't they?
Child, tell you look a mess. Be like, oh, I guess he didn't have no time. You go here, this is gonna walk out with like, dang, these kids is rude. So rude. So I want to talk about you and your evolution as a writer. You started with So Done, which broke ground for middle grade fiction, tackling taboo topic. You've written about teen cliques, street life, real struggles. Now with the Hype series, it just feels like you're going even a little bit more deeper, and also having a lot more social commentary about the systems that we are in and what we function in,
Yes.
and where those systems are. How do you see your own work evolving, and what are you asking of readers now that you weren't asking before?
Oh,
I know. I mean,
yes. No, you really like these questions are so, and they're pulling out what was in there. Like that's what I love. That's what I love. You're pulling out what's in there. Um, I really when I wrote So Done, Doughboys, and Turning Point, those are my three upper middle grade books. When I wrote those, I was really surprised, honestly, that I didn't get a lot more. You can't do that from HarperCollins. So shout out to Green Willow, HarperCollins, because they really let me go there. I mean, letting me call a book Doughboys, like, and
yeah,
this is for 13-year-old. So they really let me go there. And what I think they respected was that I was a caretaker for the story that I was telling. And making sure that these don't feel like stereotypes, and that they don't feel like I'm just trying to exploit a tragic situation or whatever. So I think that is a lot of it is that you really have to feel like somebody is taking care of the characters, and therefore taking care of the reader who is going to you take this journey. And so the only difference between how I did that for the 13-year-old reader versus what I'm doing for an older reader is, as you said, I'm a little more raw. I'm a little more raw in how I will depict it, because I think they can handle that.
yeah,
But for the most part, I'm still trying to be tender with it, because ultimately I want people who are going through this to understand, that we see them, that we know that somebody out there is actually possibly going through something like this.
no, it definitely felt that way because I know so many people in high school who had a parent die, or dealt with a sick parent, or had a sibling die, a bunch of different ways. And I grew up in Baltimore. My mom really grew up more around violence, street violence, than I did, and so I wish she had something like this to have as a kid. So there's also, with your advocacy work through the Brown Bookshelf, you have always been thinking and talking about like what gets published. But a lot of your stories makes me think like who gets to be human in these stories. So between the advocacy and the fiction, how do they inform each other? Like what conversation are they having with each other? The Brown Bookshelf, and then asking that question.
They are very interconnected, because I stand on making sure that Black teenagers are seen. When I started writing, it was because I did not see Black suburban girls depicted. Everybody was normally from the city, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I live in I'm an Annapolitan, right? So I've always lived between Baltimore and DC. So I've never felt represented. So I wanted to make sure that suburban Black girls were seen. I also stand on making sure that kind of like Maryland culture is represented. Like, this book was my homage to Baltimore City, so I hope I did y'all proud. I didn't have to direct it.
That was definitely in there. 'Cause I was like, at first I didn't know we were talking about PG, like the kids going out to PG County, like going to one of those schools, because everybody like, was there something in the water or whatever, that basketball?
Oh yes,
documentary.
yes.
So that's what I was thinking about. But then I was like, whoa, this was like Baltimore, because someone's like going to go get a chicken box. And I was like,
This was my love letter to Baltimore City. And I didn't set off to depict any one community. I set off to depict Baltimore's heart,
Mm-hmm.
because Baltimore's heart is in its communities like that, and I wanted to, like, represent how people rep for their, for their school and for
Yeah,
their,
we do.
so it was definitely my love letter to them. I have a book set in DC, and then my other books are set in Annapolis, like
Mm-hmm.
fictional versions of all those places. But I stand on those things. I stand on wanting those voices represented. And so my advocacy is always about amplifying Black children's lit in general. But then there are different, even different factions within Black children's lit
Yeah.
that get left behind. Very, very often publishing would like to keep us in the historical fiction corner. And if they could, they would keep us writing strictly about slavery. They wouldn't even let us cover any other part if they
Yeah, they
could.
would.
And they want to keep us kind of on the issue books, where everything has to have a lesson at the end, because it's a cautionary tale. What about just letting us live our life and, just taking the ride with life? Like, that's kind of what I stand on. So my advocacy is always for more. Let more voices come to the table and stop trying to make us be like one or two different things.
No, I really love that, and I see it even in the indie space now, especially like the indie black indie space has exploded,
Yes.
especially over the last couple years. Like where everybody's like actually searching that way if the traditional and published route doesn't work out. But I am glad that I'm starting to see now in Black young adult more like more fantasy, more
Yes.
contemporary, more all of that. And like shout out to Tracy and Ladarian. Like I love what they're doing in the fantasy
Yes.
realm. And we need more of that, right? Gabby Burton does that too. And I love that that's happening. And I love what you're doing in the contemporary space because I grew up on the click. The click, Gossip Girl, I had all the books, okay?
Yes.
Every single one. There's one too about like a girl who's a spy. She went to a private school. I can't remember what the book was called.
Ooh, was it
It's a flag cover too.
yeah, she had on the plaid schoolgirl
Black
skirt
blue skirt. And I
by
cannot
Allie
remember.
Carter. Allie Carter, but I can't think of the name of the
Yes, it
book.
is. I tell you. Oh, I have it. Oh my God. It's right here on my bookshelf.
That is fun. Yes. Yes.
So I still have some of my YA books up here because I was a Meg Cabot girly, like, and so it's nice because it's like all these folks. Yes, I went to private school, but I'm not white.
Right.
But it would be nice to have like a Black girl be a spy.
Yep. And that's it, right? Like, that's
That's
it. I just want us in, like, I know some people are like, oh, I don't like when somebody says, oh, you're the Black version, and then insert, you're the Black Meg Cabot or something like that. And I'm like, I know you may not like it, but honestly, the reason why, with my whole chest, I will say, yes, this is my nod to Sweet Valley High and Gossip Girl, is so people understand we're not in those spaces enough. We do need a Black,
Yeah.
Francine Pascal. We do need, so we do need that. And those, and my books are always, trying to find that niche. But what I love about Balancing Act, what I love about The Heights is I am writing for those of us who didn't have it either. Like, now the teenagers can have it, but all day long, I just feel like we grown women can talk about this because we didn't have it. And so it's kind of intergenerational in that way.
I really love that because, like I said, I grew up on all the girlies. Sarah Destin, like
Yes.
another North Carolinian queen that I stand, besides my friend Jordan. 'Cause we were just talking about that the other day. Like, Sarah Destin, she's from North Carolina. Totally left my brain. For young people reading Balancing Act, who recognize their own neighborhoods, their own grief, their own visibility in these pages, what do you hope they feel? And what's the possibility of being seen, even if it's just on the page? And we talked a little bit about it.
I always just want people to take a ride with these characters. I hope that whatever it might be, that people either see themselves reflected. I hope it's a mirror of some sort for them, even if it's one little part It's being a gymnast, or maybe it's just being athletic, period.
Yeah.
But if there are no mirrors in this book, if nobody in here you can relate to, I would find it hard to believe, then I hope it's a window into something that is new to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I just always just want people to sign up to take that ride. Just go ahead and let yourself go, fuss the characters out as you go along, or embrace them and say, "Oh, I just want to hold this person."
Mm-hmm.
But take that ride with them. That's what I always want.
No, I really love that. And then I'm gonna remix this last question because this has been a topic on the the Threadosphere, whatever we're gonna call it, in all threads, but also in the bookish community. For adults who still toying with YA, who doesn't maybe see the value of YA, what do you hope that this book does for them?
I am, we're starting to see a real decrease in the respect for reading. And it's starting to show in how people talk to each other. You can
Yeah.
tell that people are not reading, much less comprehending well. And so I would really like there to be a greater level of respect for what reading for pleasure does for all of us, not just young readers, but for all of us. Because our ability to empathize comes from being exposed to a lot of different things. And reading is that thing. It's that thing. It allows us to spend time with a character in a way that you can't when you're watching a show on Netflix.
Correct.
So I really would love for adult readers to understand that young adult books are for everybody. They are as complex as an adult book. They're just told from the lens of a young person.
Mhm.
And if you allow yourself to read a little bit of young adult, it makes it a little bit easier for you to understand the teenagers around you, or to understand teenagers in general. Because I think that gap between the ages is getting bigger and bigger because nobody wants to understand each other.
Mm.
But so reading young adult can help lessen that gap, if nothing else. But mostly, I really want adults to understand that kids live in the same world that we do, and young adult books and upper middle grade books allow them to process that world in something that's a little bit more digestible than it is when they're watching that on a movie or a streaming series.
I really love that because I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine about the decrease of teen, especially young girl teen, um, media with Teen Vogue on. I remember I grew up with
Yes.
17, Cosmo Girl,
Yes.
all the things, and there is nothing for young girls, young men who are trying to work out their issues, and it seems like this is the last media frontier for them right now that is visible. And I worry about what that does to the youth because they don't have things that are for them, and that is not so adult
Right.
because you guys aren't there yet.
Right.
And so, what does that do to them? Do they grow up faster than they need to? Are they exposed to things too early? And so, I definitely think there needs to be more respect on the YA genre because I thoroughly enjoy the YA genre. Okay, so what's next? Because we talked about it a little bit, because this is a series. So we're getting more of the hype. And when can we expect that?
So the plan right now is there are two more books left in the series, and they're all scheduled to like come out in the fall. So next October we would get Off Balance. That's book number two. And we do find out who Hot Lips is in Off Balance.
Because I'm still stuck on the end, and I'm not going to ruin it for nobody. But y'all, I was screaming. I said, I know you're lying. I know you're lying. Oh my God.
Going through it.
Yeah, I was like, that is one hell of a cliffhanger. One hell.
We will find out who Hot Lips is in book number two. In book number two, I consider this my author ADD trait. This book was China and Jamal. The next book is told actually through Leash and Selena.
Ooh, that's gonna be good because yeah, y'all will see because I wanted to know more about Selena and her mama. Because yeah, I want to know what's going on in that house.
Yeah. So you will meet Selena's mom. You'll meet Selena's dad because Selena is Afro Latina, and so so we'll see a little bit more into what life is like for her and Leisha's relationship. So, and then book three would come out in 2027. And I have a thought for what I want to do with book three, but I won't say anything yet because I am a pantser. I don't plot anything. So I could say this book is about that today. And then girl, a year from now, I don't know what that book gonna be about.
So before I let you go, any final thoughts you want to leave with our listeners?
Oh my gosh, you know what? My books have always gotten critical acclaim. Like I love that they're Junior Library Guild winners, and they've been best books and things like that. What I want is for this book to be like more commercial. Like I want the masses to read it. I want people to be like, "Oh my gosh, this book!" Like that's what I want people to feel about this book. And so I want people to embrace wanting to read messy books because there's so much more to it than it being messy. Messy is just the vehicle.
Yeah.
So I just open it up, y'all. Take the ride. Take the ride.
I agree because I love a messy book. I was just telling somebody that they're like, "Why do you like a fucking messy so much?" I said, "Because their books are always messy, and I like mess because I can digest and understand like how did we get to this?" And you did that too because there was a lot of mess, but it was realistic mess, and people I know who dealt with that mess, and also your family and your parents have led lives before you ever were here.
Yes.
And that is something that I wish I had this type of book growing up so I could process the mess of my parents.
Sure.
They were
Sure.
messy. Love my parents now, but they were messy, child. They just got mess galore. Messy boots. Child. So where can people find you?
So I am on Instagram and TikTok as that Paula Chase, and of course my website paulachasebooks.com.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and space to talk to me because you could have been anywhere in the world right now, but you decided to be on this podcast with me. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So with that, y'all, that's another episode of But Make It Book. And remember, y'all, keep healing, but make it book. Peace, y'all.